I tried to rebuild my life after escaping my family, but sometimes I still hear their voices in my head, rehearsing the lies they told about me. The worst part? I think part of me still wants their approval. Welcome to Reddit Toxic Family Telltales channel. New episode every day. I woke up in a hospital bed with that sharp antiseptic smell stinging my nose and a pounding in my head that didn't feel like a hangover, because I don't drink. I never have. But my mom was sitting beside me, smiling too wide, like someone trying to hide a secret under her skin. "You fell down the stairs, honey." "Too much wine," she said. My stomach twisted. "Wine? Me? No." Something was off. The nurse checking my four looked at me longer than she should have. "Your family is interesting," she murmured before walking away without another word. When I turned my head, I saw my phone on the bedside table, untouched. I grabbed it, unlocked it, and froze. There was a file I didn't recognize, a 59-minute voice recording from Thanksgiving dinner. At that moment, my cousin Kelly, just 19, came to visit. She sat quietly in the corner, wringing her hands so tight her knuckles turned white. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what?" I asked. "Nothing. Just nothing," she mumbled, eyes darting to the floor. After she left, I sat alone in my living room, the lights dim, that hospital bracelet still on my wrist. My finger hovered over the recording. I'm not the type to record things, so if I did, it must have been serious. I hit play. At first, it sounded normal. Grandma complaining about the turkey being dry. Kids laughing. Football on TV. Forks clinking. The usual Thanksgiving chaos. But then, 5 minutes in, I heard my own voice. "Uncle Jeff, can we talk for a second?" He groaned. "Can it wait? The game's on." "It's about Kelly." That got everyone's attention. The TV went silent. "What about Kelly?" he asked, his tone suddenly cautious. "She told me something about the lake house." There was a long, heavy pause. "The lake house? When did we go to a lake house?" he asked. 10 years ago. Summer of 2015. Uncle Jeff chuckled, fake and nervous. 10 years? Why bring up ancient history? She was 9, Uncle Jeff. The air in the room shifted. You could hear the tension, no more plates, no more laughter. Aunt Sharon's voice cut in like a knife. "What exactly are you implying?" "Kelly, what is she implying?" Kelly's voice, small and trembling. Nothing happened." But my recorded voice didn't stop. "Kelly finally told me about the swimming lessons you gave her. When you two were alone." "That kid's always had an imagination," Uncle Jeff snapped, his tone hardening. "She showed me the pictures you took," I said in the recording. And then, dead silence. You could hear the kind of silence that feels like holding your breath underwater. Then came a faint clink, glass tapping against glass. My voice again. "Why does the room feel weird?" Uncle Jeff's voice dripped with fake concern. "You feeling okay there?" "My drink, it tastes," a chair scraped. "Did someone?" Then a loud thud. My stomach flipped as I realized that was the sound of me hitting the floor. The recording exploded into chaos. Gasps. Chairs moving. People shouting. Kelly's voice shook. "Should we call 911? Aunt Sharon's voice was ice. "No one's calling anyone. She just had too much to drink." "But she doesn't drink." Kelly protested. "I said they had too much to drink," Sharon snapped. "Jeff, help me move her." Then came the grunting, the dragging, my limp body being moved across the floor. "Put her on the couch," Jeff ordered. "Make it look natural." "This is insane," Sharon hissed. "Get the camera. We need photos showing she's drunk." For 10 minutes, I listened to them pose my unconscious body, taking photos, laughing, mocking. "Put the turkey hat on her," someone said. "Make her hold this beer." Kelly's voice broke. "This is wrong. She was trying to help me." "Help you?" Jeff snapped. "After everything I've done for this family?" "Done for this family?" Kelly spat back through tears. "You mean buying our silence?" Then a sharp slap. "Watch your mouth," Jeff warned. "Jeff's right," Sharon said coldly. "Kelly's always been dramatic. Making up stories." "I have proof," Kelly cried. "That's enough," Sharon barked. Then Aunt Sharon took control. "Everyone memorized this." She fell down the stairs. She'd been drinking all day. The family practiced the lie out loud, over and over like a choir from hell. Fell down the stairs. Drinking problem. We tried to help. In the background, Kelly's pleading voice. "Please, please call for help." Nobody answered her. Then, faintly, the sound of sirens. Panic. "Who called?" someone yelled. "Hide everything. Remember the story." The recording cut off there. That night, Kelly and I went straight to the police. We sat across from a detective, my hands shaking as he played the recording from start to finish. When it ended, he didn't say a word. He just reached for his phone. "We need warrant teams now," he said. By 6 the next morning, every single one of them had been arrested. Uncle Jeff at his penthouse, my parents at their house, Grandma, Grandpa, Aunt Sharon, all of them. At the station, the family turned on each other like rats in a sinking ship. Aunt Sharon cried, "It was all Jeff. He made us do it." Then another aunt broke down completely. "The house, oh God, the house." "What house?" the detective asked. "Jeff bought us our house. Right after that summer at the lake, 10 years ago." The detective pulled up property records. She wasn't lying. He'd literally bought their silence. Every time Kelly tried to tell someone, he'd remind them whose name was on that deed. Even Uncle Jeff's own brother confessed, Jeff's been holding that house over their heads for a decade. The judge set Jeff's bail at $1 million. The rest of them got restraining orders. For a while I thought justice was finally here. But then, a week before the trial, Kelly showed up at my place in tears. She said the recordings were misunderstood, that the family never meant any harm. But her voice was trembling and there were fresh bruises blooming along her neck. She kept glancing out my window, where the family lawyer's car was parked across the street. Kelly rushed through her retraction, talking fast like she was being timed. Then she excused herself to the bathroom. After she left, I went in and found a small folded note on the sink. They have my daughter. Check the Ring camera from Tuesday. And that's when I realized, this wasn't over. Not even close. I must have read Kelly's bathroom note 3 times before my brain even processed what I was looking at. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it into the sink. The words, "They have my daughter and check the Ring camera from Tuesday," were scrawled in her messy handwriting, pressed so hard into the paper that the ink bled through. You could almost see the fear behind every stroke of the pen. That's when it hit me, this wasn't just about legal threats anymore. This was about a child. Someone was using Kelly's little girl as leverage to shut her up. I grabbed my phone off the counter, my pulse thudding in my ears. If they were dragging a kid into this, then this wasn't just a family scandal anymore. This was a crime. My fingers trembled as I scrolled to Detective Goodwin's number and hit call. She picked up on the second ring, voice calm and alert like she hadn't even blinked since the last time we spoke. I read Kelly's note out loud, every word catching in my throat, especially the part about her daughter. I explained about the Ring camera footage from Tuesday, the one Kelly mentioned. I could practically hear the detective's tone shift on the other end, from concern to laser focus. "Don't touch the video," she instructed. "Not yet. We need to preserve it properly for evidence. I'll call you back in a few minutes with next steps." When I hung up, my hand was still trembling. I opened the Ring app, staring at Tuesday's timeline. I wanted to hit play so badly, but I knew one wrong move could overwrite or delete something important. So I took a screenshot of the timestamp, Tuesday, 3:42 p.m., and then I closed the app. Waiting for that callback felt like waiting for a storm to hit. I couldn't stop picturing Kelly's little girl, scared, confused, wondering why her mom hadn't come for her. My stomach twisted like it was folding in on itself. Exactly 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Detective Goodwin. She told me she'd already arranged for a digital forensics specialist to come by tonight. He'd safely extract the Ring footage without altering anything. Her steady tone was the only thing keeping me from completely losing it. Before hanging up, she reminded me to treat Kelly's note like evidence. "Put it in a plastic bag," she said. "Don't touch it again." So I found a Ziploc in my kitchen drawer and slid the paper inside carefully, like it was made of glass. Then, I couldn't help myself. I opened the Ring app again and this time I watched. The footage made my blood run cold. My aunt, the same woman who said she can lie there when I was unconscious, walked up to my door holding Kelly's daughter by the hand. The little girl looked scared, her eyes darting around like she knew something was wrong. My aunt led her to a dark sedan parked at the curb. Through the driver's window I saw the family lawyer. He was waiting for them. 30 seconds. That's all it took before the car pulled away and disappeared down the street. I felt sick. Absolutely sick. I grabbed my phone and texted Kelly immediately, using the code phrase we'd agreed on earlier, our little secret signal. "How's that turkey recipe coming along?" That was our way of saying, "I got your message. I'm trying to help." But minutes passed. No reply. Each second that ticked by made the silence feel heavier, more dangerous. Maybe her phone was being watched. Or worse, maybe she couldn't reply at all. I took a screenshot of our text thread showing I'd reached out. Then I sent it straight to Detective Goodwin. If something happened to Kelly, she'd need to know I tried. At 8 p.m., the doorbell rang. I checked the peephole before opening it. A man stood there holding a heavy black equipment bag. He introduced himself as Hicks Powell, the digital forensics guy Detective Goodwin had sent. He looked like the kind of tech genius who'd rather be behind a computer than in front of people, calm, precise, and very much in control. He explained everything in plain English. "I'm going to make a verified copy of your Ring data," he said. "It'll have digital signatures proving it's authentic and untouched." I stood there watching him connect cables, run commands, type code after code. It felt surreal, like we'd shifted from being victims to actually building a case. While Hicks worked, my phone buzzed again. Detective Goodwin. She said she was bringing in CPS tonight. She'd already contacted a caseworker named Hayden Chavez, who specialized in situations where children were being used as tools in criminal intimidation. "They're treating this as an active child endangerment case," she said. For the first time in hours, I exhaled. Tears stung my eyes, not out of fear this time, but relief. Professionals were moving. People who could actually help. But then guilt hit me hard and fast. My actions, exposing everything, might have pushed them to retaliate. My bravery might have put that child in danger. A few minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was Margot Arrington, a victim advocate. Her voice was soft but practical, like someone who'd seen every nightmare imaginable and still believed in survival. She helped me set up safety plans, code words with neighbors, emergency contacts, even a go bag in case I had to leave in a hurry. She didn't sugarcoat anything. But somehow she made it feel survivable. Then one final call, Detective Goodwin again. Her voice carried a spark of something fierce. "Ada Alessandro Kim has been fully briefed," she said. "Kim, the federal prosecutor. He's already filing an emergency motion to revoke Jeff's bail," she continued. "He's calling this what it is, witness tampering and child abduction. He's arguing Jeff and his lawyer used family members to violate restraining orders and threaten witnesses." For the first time since all of this began, I felt the tiniest flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this time the system would move faster than the monsters did. I tried to go to bed around midnight, but sleep wasn't happening. Not even close. Every time I closed my eyes, the same sounds played over and over in my head, like some cruel loop I couldn't escape. That clink of glass on glass. My voice slurred and confused. And then that sickening thud, the moment my body hit the floor. But what kept me awake wasn't the fall. It was what came after. Their voices. So calm. So methodical. Like they were organizing a family game night instead of staging a crime scene. I could hear Aunt Sharon's voice giving orders, Uncle Jeff's fake laugh echoing through the recording, and the sound of camera shutters as they posed my unconscious body. Each time I replayed it in my mind, I felt a little more hollow inside. And then there was Kelly. Sweet, trembling Kelly. Her bruised neck. Her broken voice. Her little girl. That image haunted me the most, a terrified child somewhere out there, confused and crying, probably thinking she'd done something wrong. Kids always think it's their fault when adults act like monsters. By 3 a.m., I gave up pretending to sleep. I just sat on my couch staring at my phone, the soft blue light washing over my hands. The ring footage was still there, that 30-second nightmare of my aunt leading Kelly's daughter to the lawyer's car. I watched it again. And again. 5 times. I needed to see everything. The timestamp, Tuesday, 2:14 p.m. The little girl's pink jacket. The stuffed rabbit clutched in her hand. The way she kept glancing up at my aunt, like she wanted to ask something but didn't dare. And my aunt, she didn't even look back. Just kept pulling her along, hand tight on her arm, eyes fixed on that dark sedan waiting at the curb. Through the windshield I could see him, the family lawyer. Leaning over from the driver's seat, unlocking the back door. The whole thing lasted 28 seconds. 28 seconds and a child vanished. I took screenshots of every frame where his face was visible. Detective Goodwin's words rang in my head, "We need evidence, solid proof." Well, this was it. I must have finally dozed off around 5 a.m., phone still in my hand. When I woke up, the sun was already creeping through the blinds and my phone buzzed with a new email notification. Subject, Hose Records. Sender, Detective Goodwin. My pulse jumped as I opened it. Inside was the toxicology report from Thanksgiving night. I scanned the page, heart pounding harder with each line until my eyes hit the summary. They found a sedative. A heavy-duty one. The kind used in hospitals, not in wine glasses. The report explained it in long, sterile medical terms, but the meaning was simple. Someone drugged me. On purpose. Enough to knock me out, maybe even stop my breathing if they'd gone a little too far. For a second I just sat there staring at it. My throat felt tight like I couldn't breathe. Part of me felt sick, violated. My family had done this to me. But another part of me felt vindicated. Because now there was proof. Cold scientific proof that I hadn't imagined any of it. That I hadn't had too much wine or tripped on the stairs. They couldn't gaslight me anymore. I forwarded the report to both Margot and Alejandro right away. Within 5 minutes, Alejandro replied, short and to the point. This is exactly what we need for the bail modification hearing. At 8:15, Margot called. Her voice was calm, warm, grounding. She asked how I was doing and I admitted I hadn't really slept. That's completely normal, she said softly. Your mind's still trying to catch up with the trauma. She asked if I felt safe at home. I told her yes, restraining orders were in place, and Detective Goodwin had already arranged extra patrols past my house. That helped. A little. Good, Margot said. Keep documenting everything. If anyone from your family tries to contact you, call me right away. I promised I would. At 9 sharp, my phone rang again. Hi, this is Hayden, a calm female voice said. I'm the CPS caseworker assigned to Kelly's daughter. She sounded professional, but there was something gentle beneath it, the kind of tone that made you want to trust her. She explained that she needed a sworn statement describing exactly what I'd seen on my ring footage. I can do that right now, I told her, opening my laptop. Hayden asked me to go minute by minute through the video. So I did. I described everything. 2:14 and 7 seconds p.m. My aunt approaching the porch, holding the little girl's hand. 2 hours 14 minutes and 15 seconds. The child's pink jacket. The stuffed rabbit. 2 hours 14 minutes and 25 seconds. The little girl glancing up, confused, whispering something I couldn't hear. 2 hours 14 minutes and 30 seconds. The lawyer already in the driver's seat. 2 hours 14 minutes and 38 seconds. He leans over, opens the back door. 2 hours 14 minutes and 44 seconds. My aunt ushers the girl inside, quick and firm. 2 hours 14 minutes and 58 seconds. The car drives away. 44 seconds total. I read the license plate number that Hrix had extracted, repeating it twice so Hayden could get it down correctly. She asked follow-ups, detailed ones. Did the child look scared or just confused? Did she pull away? Could I hear my aunt say anything? I answered everything as precisely as I could. My voice shook a few times, but I stayed focused. Hayden said this level of detail mattered. The court needs specifics, she explained. Exact times, exact movements, it shows the child's distress and the adult's intent. That's what helps us get emergency orders. When we hung up, I finally exhaled. For the first time since this nightmare began, it felt like the truth was being built piece by piece, and for once on the record. After Hayden and I hung up, I sat there for maybe 30 seconds before my phone buzzed again. Margot. Her voice was steady like always, but this time there was a hint of purpose in it. I want to help you set up something, she said. An evidence journal. She explained it like it was a shield, a way to fight back not with anger but with order. It's a detailed log, she said, a place to record every contact attempt, every threat, every strange thing that happens, exactly when and how it happened. Patterns are powerful. Judges respond to patterns. I opened my laptop, still half running on adrenaline and caffeine, and followed her step by step. Column 1, date and time. Column 2, what happened. Column 3, evidence, screenshots, recordings, documents. Column 4, who I reported it to. We started filling it in together. Thanksgiving dinner, the drugging. Waking up in the hospital. The audio recording. Kelly's bruises. The bathroom note. The ring footage. One line at a time, I built the timeline of everything they'd done, everything I'd survived. It sounds strange, but that spreadsheet gave me something I hadn't felt in weeks, control. This whole situation had been chaos, constant reaction, never preparation. But now there was structure. Logic. Proof. Margot reminded me, even if something feels small or unimportant, write it down. Sometimes it's the smallest thing that breaks a case open. I promised I would. At 10:30 my phone lit up again, Alejandro. He didn't waste time. The emergency bail modification hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning, 9 sharp, he said. His tone was serious, clipped, like a man who'd had too much coffee and too little sleep. Then he sighed. Listen, you need to be ready for what's coming. The defense is going to try to destroy your credibility. They'll say you're unstable. That you're vindictive. Maybe even that you're delusional. The words made my stomach tighten, but I appreciated the honesty. At least I wouldn't be blindsided. Stay calm, he continued. Don't argue. Don't react emotionally. Stick to what you know. Stick to the evidence. Let the facts do the talking. I took a deep breath and said, got it. As soon as we hung up, something inside me shifted. My fear hardened into resolve. This was going to be public. They were going to call me crazy, maybe even try to humiliate me. But I wasn't backing down, not when a child's safety was at stake. The next call I made wasn't to the police or Margot. It was to HR at my job. A woman named Trina answered, cheerful and unsuspecting. Hi, this is HR, how can I help you? I hesitated. I hated what I was about to say. I need to request emergency leave for a legal matter, I managed. She asked what kind of documentation I could provide. My throat tightened. I didn't want to say it, but I had to. It's an active criminal case. I'm a witness. There was a long pause. Then she said gently, of course. Just send over the court paperwork when you can. How long will you need? At least 2 weeks, I said, voice small. Maybe longer. Even though she was kind, I still felt that awful sting of embarrassment. Like I was confessing to doing something wrong, when really I was just surviving something terrible. When the call ended, I added the HR conversation to my evidence journal, because Margot's voice was still in my head. Everything connected to the case goes in the log. Then at noon, Hendricks called. Got something, he said, his voice tight with excitement. I ran the footage through enhancement software, and I've got the license plate. My heart practically stopped. He continued, Detective Goodwin traced it. The car's registered to the law firm, your family's lawyer's company vehicle. For a second, I couldn't even breathe. It wasn't just some blurry maybe anyone car. It was his. This changes everything, Hendricks said. And he was right. For weeks it had been our word against theirs. Now we had a direct link, physical, undeniable evidence that tied the lawyer himself to the abduction of Kelly's daughter. 20 minutes later, Alejandro called back. I barely said hello before he jumped in. We're adding this to the emergency motion. This proves coordination, not just intimidation. The lawyer crossed from legal defense into criminal participation. The system was finally starting to move, and for once it was moving for us. At 6 o'clock, Hayden called again. Her tone was firm but warm. I wanted you to hear it from me first, she said. We've filed an emergency pickup order for Kelly's daughter. My heart started racing. So they're actually going to? Yes, she said. Police will assist. We're not sending a caseworker alone. There'll be officers with her the whole time. Hope flared in my chest, but it was tangled with dread. I knew what my family was capable of. When people like that start losing control, they don't go quietly. Hayden must have heard the fear in my silence because she added quickly, your address is already flagged for immediate response. If anyone from your family comes near you, officers will be dispatched instantly. I thanked her, voice shaking, and hung up. Then I opened the spreadsheet and added a new entry. 6:05 p.m., emergency pickup order filed for Kelly's daughter. It looked so clean and calm typed out like that. But my hands were trembling as I hit save. That night I went to bed early, hoping exhaustion would finally win. But sleep wouldn't come. My brain kept replaying tomorrow's hearing like a film reel I couldn't stop. What if the judge believed the defense? What if they convinced him I was unstable? What if Jeff's bail stayed the same and nothing changed? At some point I drifted off, only to wake up with my phone buzzing against the nightstand. 5:43 a.m. An email. From the law offices representing my family. Subject, concerned outreach. My stomach dropped before I even opened it. The message was syrupy and smug, every sentence oozing false concern. We understand you've been under stress and may be experiencing a mental health crisis. Your recent accusations are deeply hurtful to your loving family, who only want what's best for you. They offered me psychiatric resources. They were calling me crazy. I could feel the heat rising in my face, my vision going spotty from sheer fury. They weren't even pretending anymore. This was the strategy: discredit, gaslight, destroy. They drugged me, staged my body, kidnapped a child, and now they had the nerve to call me delusional. I took a long breath, opened my evidence journal and added one more line. 5:43 a.m., email from family's law office accusing me of mental illness and fabricating events. Screenshots attached. If they wanted a record, I'd give them one. Every threat. Every manipulation. Every lie. Because this time their cruelty was being documented, line by line, timestamp by timestamp. And this time I was the one keeping the receipts. Margot's voice was still in my head, document. Don't engage. So I took 3 slow breaths, swallowed the burn in my throat, and did exactly that. I forwarded the email to Alejandro without replying, no commentary, no fight, just one clean sentence. I received this at 5:43 this morning. Send. His response came within 10 minutes. He didn't mince words. That concerned outreach was a gift, textbook witness tampering, a last-minute attempt to smear my sanity before the hearing. He was adding it to the motion immediately. I opened my evidence journal, typed the line, attached the screenshots, and felt this grim, steady satisfaction settle in my chest. They tried to rattle me. Instead, they handed us proof. At 8 on the dot, Detective Goodwin called. I spoke with your neighbor, she said, voice crisp. Turns out the neighbor had been at her mailbox on Tuesday, right when my aunt walked Kelly's daughter to the sedan. She saw the whole thing. The reluctance. The way the little girl kept looking back. The uncomfortable tug-along that didn't look anything like a normal pickup. She's given me a written statement, Goodwin added. And she's willing to testify. I put the phone on speaker and typed as she spoke, independent witness statement obtained, 8:07 a.m. The words felt heavy and solid like bricks slotted into place. Not just my ring footage anymore. A neutral witness with no stake in the family drama who thought it looked wrong enough to remember details. That matters. 20 minutes later, Alejandro called again. Filing an expanded motion this morning, he said. We're closing the loophole. He explained that the restraining orders only blocked direct contact, which is exactly how the family lawyer had managed to act as their courier of threats and favors. The new motion would explicitly ban contact through agents, intermediaries, or third parties of any kind. He listed the evidence he'd be citing, the ring footage tying the lawyer to the pickup, the neighbor's statement, Kelly's bruised retraction, the 5:43 a.m. email. Judges take systematic intimidation very seriously, he said, especially when a child is leverage. Filing within the hour. Expect a ruling within 48 hours. I logged it, timestamped 9:15 a.m. and hit save. One more brick. My first therapy session was at 10:30, so I drove across town on autopilot. The waiting room was beige and quiet, generic landscapes on the walls, a bowl of pens that all wrote strangely smooth. The receptionist handed me intake forms, history, meds, why are you seeking counseling? I stared at the line then wrote the words out anyway, Thanksgiving. Audio recording. Family drugged me. Seeing it in ink felt like swallowing glass. John called me back at exactly 10:30. Middle-aged, kind eyes, a calm that didn't feel fake. He asked me to tell him what happened in my words. I was fine until I got to the part where my voice on the recording starts to slur, where the glasses clink, where that thud hits the floor. The tears just came. He didn't rush, didn't fix. He passed me tissues and waited while I fought to breathe around the memories. Then he taught me a grounding exercise. 5 things I can see, 4 I can touch, 3 I can hear, 2 I can smell, 1 I can taste. We did it together. Window. Clock. The tiny nick in his desktop. The weight of the chair under my palms. The murmur of ventilation. By the end, my heartbeat wasn't sprinting. I felt my body again, not just the echo of that night. He set me up for twice-weekly sessions. Trauma processing. Coping skills for court. I walked out feeling raw but not alone. Maybe I could do this without falling apart. My phone buzzed as I crossed the parking lot. I expected Alejandro or Goodwin. It was an unknown number, I'm okay. Then Kelly's name. Relief flashed white hot and then vanished. We had a safe word. She was supposed to include pumpkin so I'd know it was really her and not someone standing over her shoulder. No safe word. Just 2 words in her name. My stomach dropped. I took the screenshot immediately and texted it to Detective Goodwin and Margot with 3 short lines. No safe word. Kelly would never forget. Possible coercion. Goodwin replied within minutes, flagged, added to the file. That evening, Goodwin called again. Her voice was careful. CPS and police had attempted the emergency pickup at Kelly's mother's listed address, but the house was empty. Neighbors reported no activity for at least 2 days. I stared at the wall, phone pressed to my ear, the room suddenly too quiet. 2 days. No one home. No little girl. No Kelly. If the house was empty, where did they take her? And what were they planning next? The fear hit so hard I went lightheaded, like the air got sucked out of the room. I could picture them shuffling Kelly and her daughter from couch to couch, spare bedroom to spare bedroom, always one step ahead. But underneath the panic, something colder clicked into place. Focus. Determination. The kind of resolve that doesn't shout, it locks in. Goodwin must have heard it in my voice because she moved fast. We're expanding the search, she said. Alerts are out on Kelly's mother's vehicle. We're treating this as potential child endangerment. I thanked her even as my hands trembled and opened my evidence journal. New line, fresh timestamp, every word measured. Writing it down made the shaking ease just a little. The next morning, Rix called with the kind of update that makes your pulse stumble. That I'm okay text came from a burner that pinged a tower near a condo development, he said. One of your aunt's friends lives there. Goodwin was already working to pull the exact unit and prepping another pickup attempt, this time with more officers and additional CPS staff, so they couldn't just vanish again. Technology turns shadows into coordinates. For the first time, it felt like we weren't chasing ghosts, we were closing distance. I spent the rest of the morning on the phone with Margot, building my affidavit like a spine, straight, strong, and simple. No adjectives, she coached. No guessing. Only what you saw, what you heard, what you can prove. Draft 1 turned into Draft 4. Each pass she circled places where my anger bled through, where I'd strayed into what I thought instead of what I witnessed. By the end, it read like a laser. Ring footage, the timeline, Kelly's note, the bruises, the neighbor's statement, the traced phone. No fluff. No room to twist. When we finished, something shifted in me. Less victim. More witness. More protector. Before bed, I opened my phone and recorded a voice memo, a living log, exactly as Margot taught me. I spoke the facts in real time. The 5:43 a.m. concerned outreach email, the neighbor's statement, Kelly's coerced retraction with visible bruising, the 2:14 p.m. ring timeline, the empty house, the burner ping by the condos. Margot said these contemporaneous records matter. They prove you didn't stitch a story together later. As I spoke, a strange calm slid in. Documentation is a kind of shelter. The bail modification hearing was the next morning, and my stomach tied itself in a sailor's knot the second I saw the courtroom. Uncle Jeff sat at the defense table, eyes locked anywhere but on me. His lawyer stood and spun a fiction so polished it practically squeaked. Everything circumstantial, I'm vindictive, I'm unraveling, my loving family is trying to help. The words lifted my pulse into my throat, but I held still. Breathe. Ground. Let the evidence speak. Alejandro stood and the air changed. He played the ring footage piece by piece. He submitted the neighbor's statement. He walked the judge through the pattern, the bruised retraction, the lawyer's car, the pre-dawn email nudging me towards psychiatric resources. Step by step, like placing stones across a river. The judge took 5 long minutes to review. Then, GPS ankle monitor for Jeff. Expanded no-contact orders that explicitly banned third-party contact through any agent or intermediary. It was something, a wedge of accountability hammered into the door. But walking out, I still felt exposed, like there were too many windows and not enough locks. That afternoon, the smear campaign went public. My mom posted about mental illness running in families and how people making false accusations need help. Grandma shared an article about attention-seeking behavior. Aunt Sharon posted a prayer request for relatives who are confused and lashing out. The humiliation burned like acid, not subtle, not accidental, but aimed. So I did what Margot taught me. I didn't argue. I didn't comment. I screenshotted every single post with timestamps and quietly forwarded them to Alejandro. Within an hour, he texted back, drafting an addendum on cyber harassment and defamation, adding it to the witness tampering record. They think shame is a muzzle. It isn't. It's evidence. I saved the screenshots into the journal, closed the file, and sat very still, listening to the silence of my house, the hum of the fridge, the distant traffic. Somewhere out there, a little girl was being carted between safe people with dangerous intentions. Somewhere out there, Kelly was being squeezed from both sides. And somewhere closer than they realized, the ground beneath them was starting to crack. Because if they thought they could keep moving the pieces forever, they forgot one thing: I'm tracking every move. And the next one they make? That might be the one that finally gives them away. The emergency CPS hearing happened that same afternoon, and the courtroom felt like a refrigerator, bright lights, hard benches, the kind of quiet that makes every page turn sound loud. I sat in the gallery watching Judge Ramirez sift through stacks of documents with surgical calm. No theatrics. No wasted words. He asked Hayden precise questions, timestamps, locations, who saw what and when. Hayden laid out the ring footage, the neighbor's written statement, the bruises on Kelly's neck, the ugly pattern of adults using a child as leverage. Then the judge spoke, crisp and final, authorizing locating services, cell phone pings, vehicle monitoring, the works. He granted temporary emergency custody to the state, which meant the second they found Kelly's daughter, CPS could remove her and place her in protective care. Hope rose and collided with grief so hard it almost made me dizzy. Yes, she'd be safer. But she's also a little girl in the middle of a storm she didn't choose. I had to remind myself, staying with people who weaponize her is worse than the shock of foster placement. Safety first. Stability later. That evening my phone rang. Detective Goodwin's voice was steady, but there was weight in it. I need to share something that's going to be hard to hear. I braced myself. The financial team had found a pattern of payments from Uncle Jeff to multiple family members, starting right after the summer of 2015, the lake house summer. She read the figures slowly. Kelly's mother, thousands for a down payment weeks after that trip. My parents, smaller deposits, drip-fed for years. My grandparents, regular transfers. Aunt Sharon, monthly payments for a decade. It hit like ice water down my spine. They knew. They all knew. This wasn't confusion or manipulation. It was commerce. Silence, purchased and renewed on schedule. They chose money over Kelly. Over her childhood. Over her safety. I hung up and had to swallow hard against the urge to throw up. The next morning, I drove to John's office with my hands still shaking on the wheel. He clocked it the second I sat down. I told him about the payments, how betrayal feels heavier when it's itemized. He nodded, then shifted us into something practical. Let's script your boundaries, he said. When they call. When they show up. When they push. He had me practice them out loud until the words didn't scrape my throat anymore. I'm not discussing this. Please contact my attorney. This conversation is over. No. At first it sounded stiff and confrontational. I stumbled. He had me repeat them anyway, again and again, while he role-played being my mom on the phone, my grandma at my door, a cousin sending guilt-laced texts. Little by little, the phrases moved from my mouth to my muscles. Less panic, more muscle memory. Less reacting, more choosing. In the parking lot afterward, I checked my phone. A voicemail from an unknown number. I hit play and Kelly's mother poured into my car, breathy, desperate, asking me to withdraw my statements, promising that everything will be fine if I just let the family handle it privately. For a second, compassion tugged at me. She sounded like someone drowning. Then I remembered the down payment. The bruises. The child in the backseat of a dark sedan. The pity hardened into a clean line of resolve. I saved the voicemail and forwarded it to Alejandro. Then to Detective Goodwin. Another entry for the evidence journal, ongoing pressure campaign, nature of contact, time received, audio preserved. Later that afternoon, Hicks called with new intel. He'd been clawing through an old family cloud sharing account, recovering deleted files. The photo metadata showed uploads time-stamped immediately after Thanksgiving, exactly when the audio caught them staging the scene with my unconscious body. The timing lined up like teeth on a zipper. No holiday candids, no innocent mix-up. The metadata proved it. They posed me, took the photos, and distributed them to relatives right then. One more piece slid into place. One more lie pinned to a timestamp. And somewhere behind all of this paper and code and courtroom air, a little girl still needed to be found. Which meant we weren't done, not until that door opened and she was safe on the other side. Dread and vindication churned together in my gut like two forces fighting for space. We were finally stacking proof higher than their lies, but that only made the stakes sharper. When Alejandro called that evening, his tone was all business. The defense just filed a motion to suppress the Thanksgiving recording, he said. For a second, everything inside me froze. That recording, my voice going slurred, the thud of my body hitting the floor, the family practicing their lies, that was the cornerstone of our case. Without it, everything else would feel like scattered pieces instead of a pattern. They're arguing it's hearsay and prejudicial, Alejandro continued. My heart started pounding so loud I could barely hear him. So they can just make it disappear? He must have heard the panic because his voice softened slightly. No. They're trying, but I've already written the counter-arguments. We're using the excited utterance and present sense impression exceptions. The legal words meant nothing at first, so he explained in plain English. What you said on that recording, those were your real-time observations of what was happening to you. That's a present sense impression. And their reactions, their panic, their instructions to each other, those are excited utterances. Both are exceptions to hearsay. The judge can admit the audio in full. Hearing his calm confidence pulled me back from the edge. The fear didn't vanish, but it stopped spiraling. That night, I went to Alejandro's office. Margot was already there with folders spread across the conference table. We spent hours running testimony drills. They took turns playing the roles, defense, prosecution, judge. I learned to pause before answering, to breathe through silence instead of rushing to fill it. The pause made me sound steady instead of defensive. I kept stumbling on the timeline details, what happened first, what I saw versus what I later learned. Alejandro stopped me mid-answer. Don't guess, he said gently. If you don't know, say you don't know. The truth is strong enough without you filling the blanks. By the fourth round, my fear had started to morph into something else. Muscle memory. Control. The same questions that once felt like landmines now felt navigable. I left that session tired but ready. Early the next morning, my phone rang. Detective Goodwin again. We got an anonymous tip, she said, her voice clipped and wary. Someone claims they know where Kelly's daughter is, at a cousin's girlfriend's apartment across town. My breath caught. Do you think it's real? I think it might be a setup, she admitted, but we're not ignoring it. CPS and patrol units are already on the move. I thanked her, clinging to hope but bracing for disappointment. I'd learned by now, nothing in this family came without deceit. A few hours later, my phone rang again. Goodwin's tone was different this time, relieved but steady. They found her, she said. I sat down right where I was, hand gripping the counter. She's safe, Goodwin continued. A little shaken but unharmed. She had a stuffed animal with her. Officers said she was holding it tight and kept asking for her mom. CPS placed her with a trauma-trained foster family. I didn't even realize I'd started crying until the phone slipped from my hand. Relief hit like a wave, violent and cleansing. I sobbed in my kitchen for 20 minutes, loud, ugly sobs that left me shaking but lighter. Finally, that child was safe. Later that afternoon, another unknown number popped up on my screen. For a heartbeat, I thought it might be spam, but something told me to answer. Hello? It's me, Kelly whispered. Her voice was trembling, rushed. I'm in a bathroom. I don't have long. My chest tightened. She told me the lawyer had cornered her the day before. Forced her to write the retraction. Threatened that she'd never see her daughter again if she didn't cooperate. Her words tumbled out, scared and fast. Kelly, I said gently, can I record this? Yes. Please, she breathed. I hit record. She repeated everything, every threat, every detail. Her voice shaking but clear. When we hung up, I sent the file straight to Alejandro. He called me back within an hour, adrenaline humming in his tone. We're filing new charges, witness tampering against Sharon, Kelly's mom, and the lawyer himself. The recording gives us direct evidence. Felony level. Real prison time. He also said what I already knew in my bones, that pressing these charges could make them even more desperate. They were cornered animals now. Dangerous. But for the first time, we weren't just surviving their chaos. We were building a case strong enough to dismantle it. And this time their own voices were going to do the talking. When I walked into John's office the next morning, I felt like I was made of static, every nerve wired too tight, every breath too shallow. After everything that had happened, the bathroom call, the new charges, Kelly's terrified voice replaying in my head, I needed this session more than I wanted to admit. I told John about the guilt that had settled deep in my chest. How I couldn't stop picturing Kelly's daughter crying in some strange house, wondering why her mom wasn't there. How part of me kept whispering that this was all my fault, that if I just stayed quiet, maybe that little girl wouldn't be so scared. John listened without saying a word, letting me spill it all out until I ran out of air. Then he asked softly, when did her trauma really start? It took me a second to understand what he meant. Not when you recorded Thanksgiving dinner, he said. Not when you went to the police. It started 10 years ago, when Jeff hurt Kelly and the family chose silence over protection. You didn't create her trauma. You're the one breaking the cycle. That sentence hit me like a deep exhale I didn't know I'd been holding. He shifted gears then, less talk, more grounding. Let's reset your body, he said, and guided me through slow, measured breathing. 4 seconds in, hold for 4 seconds out. Then we layered in muscle work, tense the feet, release. Calves. Thighs. Shoulders. Bit by bit, the tension drained out through my fingertips. It felt strange, like training my body to trust itself again. He gave me homework, practiced twice daily, morning and night, until the rhythm became second nature. When I left his office, the guilt was still there, but it wasn't running the show anymore. I had tools. A plan. A way to breathe through the noise. 2 days later, Alejandro called. The defense filed their motion to suppress the Thanksgiving recording, he said. My heart lurched. They can't. He cut in gently, calm as ever. They're arguing hearsay and prejudice, but I've already written the response. You remember those exceptions we talked about? Excited utterance and present sense impression. He walked me through it again in plain English. My voice describing what was happening as it happened, that's a present sense impression. The family's panic shouting right after I collapsed, those are excited utterances. Both are admissible, even if the defense screams hearsay. He promised to send me his full brief, complete with citations and case law. His steadiness was contagious, my pulse slowed for the first time in days. The next morning my phone buzzed again, Detective Goodwin. Her tone carried that mix of excitement and disbelief she gets when something big breaks. Your neighbor, 2 doors down, she checked her doorbell camera from Thanksgiving night. My heart skipped. Goodwin sent the footage over. I opened it, pressed play, and watched the nightmare unfold in grainy grayscale. My aunt and uncle carrying my limp body from their car to my porch around 11 p.m. Like it was choreographed. My aunt kept glancing around while my uncle arranged me on the steps, angling my arms and legs just so, like he was setting up a store display. Seeing my own body like that, lifeless, pliant, was surreal. I felt detached and nauseous at once. But the proof was undeniable. Their story about too much wine shattered in under a minute. I forwarded the file to Alejandro and Margot immediately. My hands were shaking, but for the first time it was from adrenaline, not helplessness. That afternoon, a courier knocked at my door with a thick CPS envelope. Inside was Hayden Chavez's formal petition for supervised visitation, only between Kelly and her daughter with state oversight. I sat at my kitchen table and read every page, even when the legal jargon blurred. The petition laid everything out in careful, methodical detail. The decade of coercion and silence. The house Jeff bought Kelly's mother after the lake house abuse. The retraction Kelly was forced to write under threat. The bruises on her neck. The way the family used her daughter as a bargaining chip to keep her quiet. Each paragraph was professional, detached, almost sterile, but the story it told was horrifyingly clear. They'd spent 10 years using money, manipulation, and fear to hold control over 2 generations. When I set the papers down, my chest felt both heavy and resolute. This wasn't just about building a criminal case anymore. This was about stopping a cycle that had eaten through our family for years. About making sure Kelly and her daughter never had to look over their shoulders again. And for the first time I knew exactly what I was fighting for, not just what I was fighting against. Margot called that evening, and for once, her voice carried something other than exhaustion. Good news, she said. She'd found Kelly a spot at a shelter across town, one that specialized in the quiet kind of abuse most people don't recognize right away. The kind that doesn't leave bruises on skin, only on trust. They were experts in dealing with families that use intimidation and control instead of fists. Margot had already helped Kelly get a safety phone, one that couldn't be tracked or monitored. The shelter arranged legal aid attorneys to help with both the custody case and the criminal proceedings. Even better, they had trauma counselors on staff who specialized in survivors of coercive family systems. For the first time in weeks, something like real hope flickered in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, Kelly could finally start rebuilding a life without those people pulling her strings. The hope felt delicate, like a candle in wind, but it was there. Monday morning shattered that brief calm. I opened my work email to find an anonymous message sitting in my inbox. The subject line was my name. The contents? A mess of vague accusations about mental instability and false allegations against loving relatives. It was clearly crafted to sound professional, to plant doubt. My stomach twisted hard. Within an hour, HR called asking me to come in for a quick discussion. I printed everything before heading down, the restraining orders, the criminal case documentation, the DA's official letter confirming I was both a victim and witness in an active prosecution. The HR representative was calm, methodical, and kind. She read everything carefully, asked a few clarifying questions, and then said, "This qualifies as harassment, not a performance concern. We'll document it and treat it as workplace intimidation." When I walked out of that meeting, my knees almost gave out from relief. For once, I didn't have to defend my sanity, I just had to show the receipts. Wednesday afternoon, Alejandro's number flashed on my screen. My pulse spiked before I even answered. The judge ruled on the suppression motion, he said. I sat right down on my kitchen floor. The recording stays in, he continued. Your statements meet the present sense impression exception, and the family's immediate reactions qualify as excited utterances. The judge will give the jury a limiting instruction, but the evidence stands. I exhaled so hard it felt like air leaving months of tension. That audio was everything. Without it, we'd be back to my word versus their performance. Now the jury would hear it for themselves. Uncle Jeff's syrupy, fake concerned voice asking, "You feeling okay there?" The thud of my body hitting the floor. Aunt Sharon's ice-cold voice saying, "Make it look natural. Get the camera." The truth had a sound now, and soon everyone else would hear it too. 2 days later, Detective Goodwin called again. Her tone was steady, but underneath it I could hear the same restrained anger I felt building in my chest. Jeff's GPS monitor recorded a boundary violation, she said. He drove down the street where Kelly's shelter is located. He didn't stop. Didn't approach. Just cruised slowly down that block like a predator testing a fence. Goodwin had logged everything, timestamps, coordinates, the speed of his car. She filed it immediately. Some judges might shrug off a minor violation, but Goodwin wasn't letting it slide. If he's testing limits, we need a record of every attempt, she said. It didn't surprise me. Jeff was exactly the type to probe the edges of his cage. But at least now, every step he took was being watched and documented. My next session with John focused entirely on cross-examination prep. He explained what it would be like on the stand, how defense attorneys would twist my words, cut me off, try to make me doubt myself in real time. Then he switched from therapist to opponent. "Isn't it true you've exaggerated events?" he asked sharply. "I don't agree with that characterization," I replied, hands trembling slightly. He smirked, leaned forward, interrupting me mid-sentence. "You're emotional right now, aren't you? Are you sure your memory isn't affected by that?" We practiced for hours. He pushed harder each round, testing my composure, interrupting, misquoting me, forcing me to hold eye contact and breathe through it. Over and over until my answers came clean, even under pressure. By the end, I wasn't shaking anymore. Confidence didn't come from hoping I'd do okay, it came from repetition. From knowing that no matter how they tried to twist my words, I had the truth, the evidence, and the training to hold steady. When I left his office that day, the anxiety was still there, but it had changed shape. It wasn't something controlling me anymore. It was fuel. Because I knew when I took the stand I'd be ready. When Alejandro called that week, I could hear the restrained excitement in his voice before he even said the words. "The financial analyst finished tracing the paperwork," he began. I braced myself, notebook already open in my lap. He explained how they'd followed the money trail from Kelly's mother's house purchase, through shell companies, subtrusts, and corporate proxies, all the way back to one central owner, Uncle Jeff. Each layer peeled away like rotten wallpaper until the full picture emerged. He hadn't simply paid Kelly's mother off once and walked away. He'd built an entire legal structure to keep control. The house wasn't just hush money, it was a leash. He designed it so he could yank that leash anytime Kelly got close to telling the truth. If she spoke up, he'd threaten to reclaim the property, leaving her mother, and by extension Kelly, without a home. It was deliberate. It was planned. And it was monstrous. Listening to Alejandro break it down, something inside me shifted again. This was never about one night or one crime. This was about a man who had mapped out a decade of control, layer by layer, deed by deed. Every transaction was a trap disguised as generosity. 3 days later, my phone rang again. I recognized Alejandro's number instantly. This time, his tone was heavier. "The defense is signaling they might accept a plea deal on the witness tampering and possession charges," he said. I sank into the couch, heartbeat loud in my ears. A plea meant no trial for those counts. No cross-examinations. No reliving everything in open court. But it also meant Uncle Jeff would get lighter penalties than he deserved. Alejandro walked me through it like a math problem. Full convictions on all charges could bring decades, he said. But if the jury doesn't believe one element, he could walk free on the biggest ones. A plea guarantees prison time. Just less of it. His honesty made it worse and better at the same time. It was the classic trade-off, certainty versus perfect justice. As he talked, I realized that for Kelly and me, certainty might be the only kind of peace we'd get. My chest felt tight with the weight of compromise, but I understood. Sometimes justice wasn't about victory, it was about survival with proof on the record. The next week brought Kelly's closed chambers hearing for the CPS case. I wasn't allowed inside. Rules. Confidentiality. Trauma protection. So I sat outside on a wooden bench for 2 endless hours, bouncing my leg until it ached, staring at the courtroom door and picturing Kelly sitting there, small, brave, terrified. When the door finally opened, Hayden stepped out and sat beside me. Her expression was soft but exhausted. "She did it," Hayden said quietly. She told him everything. Kelly had described what happened at the lake house when she was 9. How Jeff's threats had followed her into adulthood. How the family used her daughter to force silence. The judge, Hayden said, listened, really listened, and his face showed he understood the gravity of what she'd endured. Right there in chambers, he finalized the supervised visitation order. Strict location rules. Licensed supervisors only. No other family members present ever. Kelly would finally get to see her daughter safely. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I swallowed them back. It wasn't sadness, it was relief so sharp it almost hurt. After everything, Kelly could start rebuilding something real. Next, I had to deal with work. I called HR again and asked for a meeting to request extended leave. Sitting in that office, explaining that I was a key witness in an ongoing criminal case, made me feel small and exposed, but the representative was careful and kind. She asked about the expected timeline. I showed her Alejandro's documentation, plus letters from Detective Goodwin and Margot's office confirming the ongoing court process. The company approved protected victim leave under state law. There were conditions: regular communication with my supervisor, updates on hearing dates, acknowledgement that reduced hours would mean reduced pay, but I didn't hesitate. Money could wait. My mental health couldn't. Still, when I got home, the numbers started circling in my head like vultures. Bills, groceries, rent. I texted Margot about it and she called back within minutes. "Let's get you into the victim compensation system," she said. "They can help with lost income, therapy costs, travel expenses. We'll go step by step." The forms were dense and bureaucratic, pages of checkboxes and explanations, but she guided me through every line until it was done. By the time we finished, I felt something close to steadiness. Not safety yet, but structure. A plan. After months of being dragged from one crisis to the next, it finally felt like we were the ones setting the pace. And somewhere deep down, beneath the exhaustion and anger, that small spark of hope from the shelter call was still alive, steady now, not flickering. The kind of light you can start to walk toward. The next 2 weeks blurred into a cycle of phone calls and nerves. Every few days, Alejandro would check in, always steady, always professional, even when the news turned my stomach. "Negotiations are moving," he'd say, and I could tell from his voice that moving meant tense. He was fighting for every inch. He wanted Uncle Jeff to admit specific facts, not just plead guilty to some watered-down summary. He refused to let the defense sweep the details under the rug. "If we do this," he said, "it's going on record. He admits what he did. And he registers as a sex offender, non-negotiable." The defense team kept trying to chip away at that. One day they offered a plea without registration. The next, they wanted lesser charges in exchange for cooperation. Alejandro said it was like arguing with people who saw this as a chess match, not the wreckage of real lives. He reminded me gently that, while my opinion mattered, the final call belonged to the DA's office. I hated that part, the helplessness of having to trust the system after everything the system had missed before. Still, I stayed pragmatic. Some accountability, even partial, was better than risking a jury trial where charm, lies, and doubt could undo everything. Writing my victim impact statement nearly broke me. I spent an entire weekend alone with my laptop, curtains drawn, my apartment silent except for the sound of typing and stopping and trying to breathe. The template Alejandro sent had neat, emotionless prompts: describe how the crime has affected your life. I wrote about waking up in a hospital with no memory of what happened after Thanksgiving dinner. About finding the audio file on my phone. About hearing my own voice slur and fade just before that terrible thud. About the photos. The staging. The lies. Every sentence scraped raw nerves, but I forced myself to keep going. I didn't want to sound like a victim, I wanted to sound clear. Someone the judge would have to listen to, not just pity. I ended with the hardest truth. They didn't just drug me. They erased my trust in family, in safety, in the idea that love protects. And they laughed while doing it. When I hit save, my hands were shaking, but there was a strange stillness in my chest. I'd said it all. On paper. Permanently. The following week, the defense tried one last swing. Their lawyer sent Alejandro a letter dripping with arrogance, threatening to expose my private life if we didn't agree to a softer deal. They'd dredge up past relationships, question my stability, paint me as vengeful. Classic smear tactics. Alejandro called me right after reading it. His tone was clipped, but the fury underneath was unmistakable. "Let them try," he said. "We have physical evidence, recordings, medical records, corroborating witnesses. They can posture all they want. The facts aren't changing." Even so, the threat hit hard. I spent that night pacing, imagining strangers reading lies about me, my name tied to gossip in some public record. But by morning I was calmer. I realized something simple and freeing: they can't embarrass me out of the truth. Let them dig. The evidence would bury their story first. When the plea hearing finally came, the courtroom felt both too big and too small at once. Alejandro sat beside me at the prosecutor's table. Uncle Jeff stood a few yards away, looking smaller in his gray suit than I'd ever seen him, like the weight of his own mask had finally cracked. Judge Ramirez went through the formalities. Then came the words that made my breath catch. "Guilty," Jeff said. He pled to felony witness tampering and possession of illicit images. The remaining charges, everything tied to the lake house and the drugging, were placed nol proska, held in reserve like a loaded chamber. The outcome was complicated. Relief tangled with disappointment in my chest. 8 years felt too short for 10 years of horror. But Alejandro leaned over and reminded me quietly, the dismissed charges can come back if he violates anything. One step out of line and we reopen the rest. It wasn't full justice. But it was something real. 2 weeks later, sentencing day dawned cold and gray. The kind of morning where breath turns to fog. I sat in the gallery between Margot and Detective Goodwin, both silent but steady beside me. Judge Ramirez reviewed the details carefully, his voice echoing off the paneled walls. 3 years in state prison for the count of felony witness tampering, he said. 5 years for possession of illicit images. Then the words that made my heart thump hard. To be served consecutively. Not at the same time, one after the other. 8 years total. Plus lifetime sex offender registration. Plus permanent no-contact orders with Kelly, her daughter, and me. The gavel struck once. Sharp. Final. Jeff didn't look back as deputies let him out, shackles clinking against the floor. I sat there, silent, my hands pressed together in my lap. 8 years wasn't enough for what he'd done. But for the first time it was something. His power was gone. His control severed. And as I stepped outside into the cold air, the weight I'd carried for months began, slowly, finally, to lift. Relief made my whole body tremble as Judge Ramirez went through each consequence. I remember gripping the wooden bench so tightly that my palms ached. When he said the words lifetime registration, something in me finally exhaled. For the first time, Uncle Jeff wouldn't be able to hide what he was, from neighbors, employers, or anyone who ever searched his name. No more secrets. No more pretending. It wasn't perfect justice, nothing ever could be, but it was a kind of protection that would follow him forever. The following week, Aunt Sharon's plea deal came through. Misdemeanor obstruction. Mandatory counseling. A suspended sentence that would become real time if she slipped up even once. It felt strange hearing it described in legal language so tidy and impersonal, like the system was quietly labeling decades of cruelty and complicity as something administrative. After that, the family completely cracked apart. Kelly's mother claimed Jeff had coerced her into silence. My parents insisted they were just loyal and hadn't really known what was happening. Grandma stopped answering calls altogether and changed her number. Watching them unravel was like watching the slow collapse of an old building you used to think was home. The anger that had kept me upright for so long faded into something dull and weary. The destruction wasn't shocking, it was inevitable. Lies had been the only thing holding that family together. Once the truth started breathing, the whole structure fell in on itself. 2 days later, Kelly called me. Her voice was thin, tired, but there was something in it I hadn't heard in years, the tiniest trace of hope. She'd just started trauma-informed therapy with a specialist Margot recommended, someone who focused on family coercion and generational abuse. It felt good to talk to someone who gets it, Kelly said quietly. She didn't ask why I didn't leave or tell sooner. She just listened. That one sentence cracked something open inside me. After everything, the fear, the courtrooms, the evidence, just hearing that Kelly had found a safe space made it all worth it. Healing would take years. I knew that. But she was finally on that path. A week after sentencing, CPS scheduled the first supervised visit between Kelly and her daughter. Kelly was so nervous she could barely hold her car keys, so I drove her to the shelter myself. The visitation room was small and warm, with toys in one corner and a CPS supervisor sitting quietly in the back, pen poised over a notepad. Kelly's daughter came in holding a social worker's hand, her little shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on the floor. Kelly didn't rush her. She just knelt on the rug and pulled a familiar book from her bag, the one her daughter used to beg for at bedtime. Kelly opened it and began to read in a soft, steady voice. At first, the little girl didn't move. She just twisted the hem of her shirt, staring at her shoes. But after a few minutes, she took one cautious step forward. Then another. By the time Kelly reached the second page, her daughter was sitting right beside her, tiny shoulder pressed against her mother's arm. Kelly didn't say a word, she just turned the page and kept reading. Watching from the observation window, I couldn't hold it together. Tears blurred my vision as I pressed my hand against the glass for balance. Relief crashed over me so strong it almost hurt, but beneath it was something else, this fierce, protective resolve. I knew this was only the beginning for them, the first fragile step of healing. When the 30-minute session ended, the little girl wrapped her arms around her mother's neck and refused to let go. For the first time in a very long time, the room didn't feel like a courtroom or a shelter or a place of pain. It felt like reclamation, the start of something new and fragile and real. That week felt quieter, but not simpler. In John's office, I laid out my therapy journal like evidence, each page full of moments when panic had hit out of nowhere. He scanned my handwriting, then started circling themes, glass clinking, holiday decorations, the words family gathering repeating again and again. These, he said, tapping the circles, are your trauma triggers. We didn't stop at naming them. We built a plan. For the sound of glass clinking, John had me practice grounding right there. 5 things I could see, 4 I could touch, 3 I could hear, 2 I could smell, 1 I could taste. For holidays, we brainstormed new traditions, quiet dinners with friends, volunteering, movie nights. Avoiding triggers isn't the goal, he said. Preparation is. That hit me. For the first time, I didn't feel broken for being triggered, I felt equipped. When I left, he handed me a typed list of my triggers and coping strategies. I taped it inside my medicine cabinet so I'd see it every morning, not a list of weaknesses, but proof of what I could survive. A few days later, Alejandro called. His voice carried that clipped precision he used when the law was doing something complicated. He'd filed civil asset forfeiture paperwork on the shell company that technically owned Kelly's mother's house. The legal explanation was a maze, proceeds of crime, facilitation of ongoing offenses, but the meaning was clear enough. Uncle Jeff's hold over that house was broken. For now, the house would stay with Kelly's family, giving her younger siblings stability. But the adults, the ones who took the money, who stayed silent, would live under the shadow of losing it. It wasn't perfect justice, just a slow one. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted every adult who enabled Jeff to lose everything. Another part saw Kelly's brothers and sisters and thought, they didn't ask for any of this. They deserved a home. Alejandro said civil cases could drag on for years. For now, the house stood, but the truth was written into its paperwork. The walls might hold, but the secret that built them was gone. That weekend, I turned my attention to safety. The locksmith came first, changing every lock on every door, including the garage. I paid extra for pick-resistant hardware, metal heavier than I expected in my hand. Then came the cameras, 2 new ones covering the driveway and the back door, the Ring doorbell still guarding the front. By the time the sun set, my little house looked ordinary but felt fortified. Margot came over that afternoon with her folder and that calm, practical energy she always carried. We sat at my kitchen table drafting a safety plan, not just vague ideas but exact instructions. If a family member showed up, call the police first, not the lawyer. If I noticed someone following me, drive to the nearest public location, not home. If a threat arrived by phone or email, screenshot, document, forward to Alejandro. We wrote everything down, steps, numbers, safe places. By the time we finished, the fear that used to live everywhere in my body had shrunk into something I could fold into a binder. I wasn't waiting to be heard anymore. I was ready. That night I printed 3 copies of the plan, one for my purse, one for my car, one for the table beside my bed. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt like I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was taking my life back, door by door, word by word, page by page. That Monday my inbox finally carried good news. HR had approved my phased return-to-work plan, 3 half-days a week to start, increasing gradually as I adjusted. The email ended with something I didn't expect, a note saying several coworkers had asked about me and were looking forward to my return. 2 of them even messaged me directly. One said she missed working with me. The other said she'd been following the news and wanted me to know she believed me. I cried right there at my computer. For months I'd been terrified that the family smear campaign had ruined my reputation, that everyone at work saw me as unstable, dramatic, or vindictive. Those simple, kind messages felt like light filtering through a room I'd thought was sealed shut. For the first time, going back to work didn't feel terrifying, it felt like reclaiming my life. 2 weeks after Kelly's first supervised visit, she recorded her formal video statement at the police station. Detective Goodwin set up a comfortable chair instead of an interrogation table. I waited in the hallway, pacing slowly, giving her space to tell her story without my presence altering it. The recording lasted 40 minutes. When Kelly came out, her face was blotchy from crying, but her posture was steady, her eyes clear. Goodwin told me later that Kelly had fully withdrawn her coerced retraction. She reaffirmed the truth about Uncle Jeff's abuse, the years of threats, and the manipulation involving her daughter. She even described how the family lawyer had cornered her into silence. That statement became part of the official record, insurance against any future lies, any appeal Jeff might try to file. Hearing that gave me chills. Kelly's voice, once trembling in a bathroom, was now strong enough to stand on its own in a courtroom file. Not long after, I asked Detective Goodwin for one more thing, to visit the lake house site. We drove 2 hours out of the city early on a Saturday morning. I brought my camera, not for nostalgia but for documentation. The house itself was gone. Torn down years ago. All that remained was an empty lot, overgrown with weeds and the faint outline of a foundation under the dirt. I walked the perimeter slowly, taking quiet photos. No flowers. No candles. No goodbye ritual. I wasn't there to honor anything. I was there to confirm that this place, where the worst of everything began, was powerless now. The air was still, just birds and wind. The lake glimmered beyond the trees like nothing had ever happened there. When I turned back toward the car, something in me felt different. Not forgiveness, that would never come, but acceptance. The story that began there was over. The lies were gone. Kelly was free. Her daughter was safe. I took one last picture of the empty field and got into Goodwin's car. We drove back in silence that didn't need filling. 2 months after sentencing, Kelly and her daughter moved into transitional housing. A small 2-bedroom unit in a supervised building filled with other families rebuilding their lives. Kelly had finished her job training and picked up part-time shifts at a grocery store. She was saving for something permanent, something that would finally belong to them. I helped them move what little they owned, a few boxes, a worn suitcase, and a bag of toys. Her daughter darted from room to room, choosing her bedroom with a shy giggle. "This one," she said, pointing. "This one's mine." She called Kelly Mama again without hesitation. That word, so simple, so normal, felt like the loudest victory of all. That night, I closed my evidence journal for the first time in months. The locks on my doors worked perfectly. My new cameras blinked steady blue lights outside. I was sleeping through most nights now with only the occasional nightmare. My phased return to work was going well. I'd even moved up to 4 full days a week. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. The scars from what my family did still existed, some visible, most not, but therapy with John was helping me build new patterns instead of living inside old ones. Some sounds still made me flinch. Holidays still carried shadows. But Kelly and her daughter were safe. Uncle Jeff was behind bars, serving 8 years. Registered for life. And everyone who'd helped him was facing the fallout of their own choices. Every morning I woke up knowing I had done the right thing, even when it cost me everything. Some losses are worth enduring if it means protecting someone else from being silenced. Thanks for watching. Today's train wreck is over, but tomorrow's ride is already on track. Subscribe so you don't miss it.